Okay, I just wanted to pop in with a quick video. This is a third installment to my video referencing the potential strength in identifying as a primate. Uh, first and like a lot of people would say, like before you're anything, you're a man, or like for a male at least. Maybe you could say also woman, like as in mankind. But for anything that you do, you're a man first and or slash person first. And to that, I would say you're a primate first. And so identifying as a primate may actually be a way of accessing some of our greater potential as still being a primate, in that some of saying being the idea of being a man has to do with in humans. Part of thinking oneself a man is actually part of being a primate, because in a lot of primate societies, different forms of primates, hierarchy is endemic and is very fundamental to being a primate. That may actually be the most, so like as much as we would think ourselves to be a man, maybe the thing that we could do that's the most like a primate is actually rank off and stature ourselves to different degree, classify ourselves to different degrees of standing hierarchy, which amount to privilege and access to mating partners and resources, combine both. And also partners provide access to resources, and resources provide access to partners. All that is part of being statured. And part of the idea of man is that I would imagine in most iterations of human society, wherever you've had the prevailing idea of a man, you've had people that would be appreciated and respected as less than a man, from children all the way up to other grown people. There'd still be those less than a man that owe respect and deference, to and fealty to other people that would be a man. So most of what we have for life now can be reduced to still being feudalism. Like you could say we now have neo-feudalism. Like for example, paying rent to a landlord, directly or in some roundabout way, we end up paying rent for our life. According to King Noble, we pay for the sensation of freedom. We rent our freedom. We're extorted for what, as much as we fancy and appreciate liberty, we also are extorted for it and are coerced to give labor for that. So the sensation of freedom of choice, we actually pay for that, and we give up our choice for the sensation of choice. But you could say that some people could say that you avoid conflict and violence like that, or some people could say you exactly incite conflict and violence like that. But that's not the premise of this video. But just that is very primal, primitive. I don't mean primitive derogatory or condescending, but for lack of a better word, is very primitive to form a rank structure, a hierarchy, a discrepancy in status that amounts to the social relationships that make a collection of humans function and differentiate the members one from another, because we're always both heterogeneous and homogeneous, distinct and similar in this existence. But so I just want to point that out. But then someone say, yeah, but you're saying that would be disrespectful to say that we're still a primate, because we can sense ourselves as being different from primate, and also we are not exactly sexually attracted to primates. So there would be some difference between our iteration of primates and primates. That's also again heterogeneous and homogeneous, so as to be transcendent, because we are homogeneous with other primates and also other humans. We're very 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 similar. They say genetically, from a scientific standpoint, the actual difference in the DNA, the actual point so a lot of things are like, I was talking to someone on an airplane, and they said that for all the money that you have in life, all the resources you have going on for you, what actually finds its way into your pocket is kind of like the cream of that, is what's left over from that. Because a lot of your resources, it's tied up in this, it costs this, but whatever you have on hand, that's the more significant degree of all that you have. So you could say what's in your pocket may be a small fraction of all that you're worth on paper, but still that it's in your pocket is very significant. Also, the part that, like, if you take out when water begins to boil, or when water becomes ice, when a lot of things transmute, they call that transmuting. When something reaches this degree, and then now it sublimates to something different. That actual degree, that can be a very fine degree, that is that distinction, but things are very different once things reach a degree. Part of the distinction between human beings, among human beings, and also among primates, it's a very small degree of what comprises them that gives that sublimates to something different. I think that what sublimates for us, that makes us think ourselves a man, the main of which, the two main of which that I'm aware of. These are not my original thoughts. One I got from my music teacher, and the other I got from my father. But I think these are not original to them either. But it's somewhat still a unique insight that they both offered. One is that my music teacher pointed out, my first guitar teacher that I met in the Black Church of the North, where I'm from, in the Twin Cities, which, according to Judge Joe Brown, St. Paul, Minneapolis was a former terminal point of the Underground Railroad, and there's a very deep, rich culture around the Black church in the Twin Cities. Some of it from it being a hub and like a landing zone for people in the North. Once African Americans began to leave the South, so some of your northern cities, like say Gary, Chicago, Milwaukee, St. Louis, maybe Memphis, a lot of your northern cities, they have been hubs and landing zones for people from the South leaving slavery and sharecropping and Jim Crow. But not that it was all the way better in the North, but there just some of that actual deep, rich history from the South is present in the North. But then also going back to slavery, according to Judge Joe Brown, and that this area is a landing zone for the Underground Railroad. Historically, that might be a unique insight for someone. But so I was blessed with proximity to and access to some of the blessings of the Black church, as the Black church made itself available to youth, especially at-risk youth. So I think I was somewhat at risk if you look at me statistically as a young person, but they weren't chauvinistic, and they weren't they didn't what's the word for it, they weren't inordinate in proselytizing or advertising. But if you needed that blessing, they would be available and make themselves known to you, like for other young people in my school. And so I found my way to the Black church, and I was blessed. I had many blessings in life from that. One was gaining propriety of conduct as a young person, very young, before I got a chance to injure myself, maybe legally, socially, or physically, or chemically. But then also, I met a brilliant guitarist who took an interest in me in the Black church. Even though I experienced some turbulence in church, this guitarist took an interest in me. His name was One Ashanti, but he was a really cold brother. He was cold like that. But he told me that one of the main things about us that give us our blessings is our opposable thumb. What may be achieved with the opposable thumb distinguishes us a lot from other primates. Also, I had my route train. So when I first I've been a school bus driver of different tiers of buses, so I've driven city buses, transit buses, like regular ones, and the articulated ones that look like an accordion. Not a lot, but I have driven those in service in the training that led up to that. Then I also drove large school buses, small school buses, as in like for that would look like remedial or for special needs. And then vans, like a Type 3 van. It looks similar to like a Amazon van, but it's outfitted to transport small like special demographics of students, either special needs students or students traveling from a distance to get to school that would need like a little bit more unique routing, and it could seat like I think is it eight students, and then two driver and a passenger, I think was that vehicle, Type 3. But my first role as a school bus driver was that Type 3 van. It was technically a school bus, but it wasn't like a CDL at that point. But my route trainer, I had been trained to drive the bus, but the one that actually took me on my route, because there's some nuances to driving a route if you're not used to like serving as a bus driver of some kind. And she would take me on the route and train me about the route. And she was an excellent trainer. She showed me a video of a man that was a motorcycle expert and training people for fine skills of riding a motorcycle. and he would like critique like people at these motorcycle shows that weren't having like some of the training that he promotes, but they're having like very nice motorcycles. And he was a little bit like ridiculing that, but he was saying that the connection between your hand and your eyes, that is your mind, is so profound that most people can't appreciate. Like they say hand-eye coordination, but that might be an understatement in how profound that connection is. A lot of times when you're on the road, you look this way and the vehicle goes this way, because your hand went, you're actually your whole body. It's not actually just your hand-eye coordination, it's just your coordination, but especially about your hands. You could almost say your hand would be like the furthest node of that. So your whole body is connected. But the furthest point from from your body, the furthest thing from you that is still you, would be your feet and your hands. So you could almost say that all of the connectivity of the body, it may be like, it's kind of a lot of it's like a lot of, so we have like these nerves that are almost like lines, like cables, but it's like a range, like an extension, a range. So you could almost say that from top to bottom completes the circuit. The range from your mind to your hands is the range. So all that may go between your mind and your hand may actually be your whole body, but as the connectivity goes. But you see it as just your hand, but actually whatever makes its way to your hand, it's not just that your thought went straight to your hands by those nerves that go to that hand. No, it went through your entire existence to your hand. So all of you is connected, but especially to your hand. So the connection between your mind and your body is profound, especially your hands. If you get on a motorcycle, now he was training motorcycles, but that concept, but if you actually get on a motorcycle, that motorcycle, the balance that you experience on a motorcycle, it's actually one of the brilliance of a motorcycle is, it's actually the same with cars, but you can appreciate in a motorcycle. Your entire existence is connected to your body and to the motorcycle. If you play with your body on a motorcycle, you think a motorcycle is this heavy and it's responding to your balance. Like how difficult is that for a child, for anyone to get up on two wheels to balance a bike? It doesn't seem very difficult once you can do it, but it's a big jump the first time you do it. But actually, when you're on it, how do you actually ride a bike? How do you keep a bike on two wheels? You couldn't exactly articulate that and write that in a book, because no two people can do that exactly the same, and especially at the different rate of speed you to be on a bike. There's different nuances physically that sustain something in balance at different ranges and degrees of velocity that are profound, but that you couldn't articulate. You have to feel something like that. But also when you're doing that, it actually responds to your body deeply. And so like sometimes you see someone on a motorcycle and they're like this, and then they're turning like this and stuff like that. You can't teach some of that stuff, but you feel that instinctually. But actually, the motorcycle is responding to those very fine things you would do with your body, especially as you're going fast. And some of the brilliance of riding a motorcycle is that how do you know when you're a great motorcycle rider? How do you know when you've mastered a motorcycle? You've mastered a motorcycle when you've mastered the sensation of your body, of yourself, the confidence that comes from that. And then also the respect for yourself. So maybe when you would really master a motorcycle is when you respect motorcycles and your body, maybe even enough not to get on a motorcycle, but now you have the balance of having felt how connected your body is, and how of what it is to be conscious of your body. Because a motorcycle makes you conscious of your body deeply, and a lot of times we're actually not conscious of our bodies. So like, how many times have you went like this? That's freedom. That choice. So what is freedom? Freedom is choice, but you also have choice of your motor. No one watching this could have predicted the exact way I just moved my hand like that. None could I, because I was being spontaneous in that moment. I was exercising free will and choice. That's actually freedom. That might be freedom right there, what freedom is. The freedom of riding a motorcycle isn't necessarily impressing people or moving like the actual where you would go in a motorcycle. It's actually exercising autonomy over yourself, your anatomy, your autonomy over your anatomy is what freedom is, and the experience of a sensation of a motorcycle. But so that our hand would be different than other primates like that. and that the things we could do with our hand for being different, but also the things that we would think and be for having a hand that can move differently and moving our hand differently to our different purposes in life. That's a lot of what our iteration of a primate is. But then the secondary of which is our skin, like that. So what's sexy? One of the sexiest things is actually your skin. What makes us attracted to one another is our skin. One of the sensations, the enjoyment of sexual activity is skin, the contact of skin. But why do we have less of hair than other primates? According to my father, in Africa, the savannas of Africa, some of what distinguish us from other primates. Now, other primates can walk similar to us, like say monkey, ape, gorilla, baboon, chimpanzee. They can stand on 2 feet. That's a lot of what distinguishes us from other creatures on Earth, is that we stand on 2 feet. Because we stand on 2 feet, our blood sits in our body differently than being prostrated and prone on all fours like other animals. According to Osho, that allows for higher orders, different orders of thought. Not necessarily better, because like some animals, I don't think you could say that we're more intelligent than other animals, especially if you appreciate sensation, maybe just tact and perception. You can't say that we necessarily have more tact or etiquette. Even as much as we would give a dog a hard time, dogs know what it means to shut the hell up and have respect among other dogs and among people, finer than humans. Not enough to. When's the last time you heard a dog say something? You've heard a dog bark. It might sound stupid. When's the last time you heard a dog say something stupid that got them to lose a job or something like that? Or a cat, no less. So they have tact and social etiquette and graces and discipline that may be beyond that of a human, but also their range of perception and actually their pragmatic, their efficiency in not doing things that are useless, their pragmaticism. Some of our human beings, some of our conflict and our suffering and atrocity, it comes from our hoarding and sensation of private property. Now, animals, they do guard territory like jealously sometimes, like a human, but they don't exactly hoard things the way that humans do. Some of that might be because we've had to anticipate, and so you could say that human beings, well, all I meant to say is that according to my father, the reason, the advantage of having less hair like we do is because we could be cooler like that. So we could travel a greater distance on foot than other primates because we have less skin like that. The sweating that comes from that, but the regulation of temperature, it amounts to endurance. So you could say that potentially other primates may have more strength, like say a gorilla would have many times more strength, but not necessarily more endurance when it gets hot, because they would be fatigued because of that hair, but not human beings. So one is that we're unique among nature as primates because we stand on 2 feet. And how that would affect the blood in the brain, or the lack of blood in the brain, to allow some of the higher orders of thought and reasoning and like maybe creativity that comes with that. Then that redoubles, because a lot of the most effective things are a combination that redoubles into what we would have to do with our hands, the skills that can come from that, the ingenuity that comes from that. It's connected to the mind like that, but then, and standing on 2 feet like that. But then for humans, also traveling at range like that, that'd be to go from one viable environment and its resources, then travel according to maybe the challenges and demands of weather and diet and conflict with other animals and humans, to a more fitting or appropriate, advantageous zone environment because of our less of hair and the temperature control, and then the range and endurance that would facilitate. And so that's a lot of what you're saying. So when you're saying like, yeah, I'm not a primate, like I'm a man. I'm not. So when you say you're a man, you're actually still saying you're a primate and primitive, because primates are very like primitive in ranking, and like they form a hierarchy. Not only primates, but especially primates will form a hierarchy. Then you also are saying that you have less of hair because that are unique. So what does it mean to be human? Part of what it means to be human is to have less hair. There's a brilliant book called Just Human. It shows like a hand like this. It's like from like maybe like 20 years ago. It's just called Human, and it talks a lot about like evolution. I was very young when I read it. I was an adult still, but I was very young, and I could probably, some books you read it once and you read it at another point in life, even not very much longer, maybe a month, a year, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and you now that book will impact you differently because you have different experiences to reference when it says different things, but also the development of your mind is different than it was at any other point in your life. So that same book could be of value the second time. I may actually read that and then add on to this series if I can think of an insight with it. And I'm also going to begin doing some book reviews on this channel, and like read books and give insight or give response, just to make people aware of different titles, but then also just have food for thought and ammunition with different ideas. Because the greatest of creativity is more so, I think, combining and deleting, but also collaborating. So your greatest of ideas are not entirely original. They may be original when you think it, but the actual what led up to it, the influences in the ideas. It's like ideas are almost like people. It took a person to birth another person, and it took an idea to birth another idea. But the combination of your own experiences and choices within the heritage that you come from, both from other people and ideas, that's still valuable and unique. But that book, Human, it talks a lot about what it is to be a human, like from an evolutionary standpoint, and it references a lot of it's a very beautiful book, just even the title of it, just Human, like that. But for us, like, so when you're saying a man and we appreciate ourselves a man, I'm saying we're still a primate within that, and that's beautiful, and maybe the foundation and standpoint to truly understand what we are, and therefore express and become. So what is it to be a master? To be yourself, to be more of yourself is what you're saying with master. Even master might be a little bit pretentious like that. It's just you're just human. You're not actually more at any point more than human. Whatever the greatest of master, they got a lot of their seasoning, some form of opportunity from a human, and there likely had been another person at one time, whether living or not, no longer living or not yet to be living, that was as great as them, or could be as great and better, or was as great and better, and may or may not be known to others, and they would have been no more or less than human. So the greatest of great, as we can experience and perceive, is human. And a lot of even what we understand of greatness, like when we're referencing and appreciating like things that are sublime and even holy, a lot of that we're anthropomorphizing, and we're extending and lending our understanding and experience of life onto that concept. It may be impossible to conceive of anything without the lens of being human, but they also say that what it is to be human is from the lens of what is great, and that we are in the image of what is great. So maybe what is the image of great? If that's the case, it may be primate. But I meant to say that, but when you do say man, you're saying like a statured primate, and some of the etiquette and graces and class and civility that would come from that. And then you're also saying the less of hair like that, and then also the fact of standing on 2 feet and what that would do with the blood flow and the thought that comes from that, and also the dignity, because your self-concept also affects your thought process. And so the dignity of walking on 2 feet, it impacts the way that other creatures and animals engage and perceive humans, and also other humans perceive humans. And that's significant also. Part of maybe even what you're saying with man, is it mankind, but man, woman, as that is respectable. Part of that is actually the stature and the dignity of standing on 2 feet, both socially, psychologically, and functionally. So you're saying that, but then also and then the behavior that would correspond with that, from between oneself and others and oneself. But then also the opposable thumb like that, and the skill that can come with that, but also the thought that's connected to the skill that comes with that, is what you're saying with that. But we're still a primate within all that. But maybe that's what it is to be both primate and a man, as not just male, but just mankind. That's what that means. So I hope this can be of value. Peace.